I now declare this 19th meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts in order. Colleagues, as agreed previously, today we have the Auditor General with us to discuss main estimates. We'll be doing a public hearing component here. At the end, I'll be putting 2 questions to you. Shall vote 1 less the amount already granted in interim supply carry, and that is debatable and amendable. And then I shall also place before you, shall I, the Chair, report the main estimates to the House, and that is also debatable and amendable. Right. And then the last question would be, does the committee want to do a substantive report based on the OAG's departmental performance report and report on plans and priorities? So I'll be putting those questions to you as a matter of routine business at the end of this hearing. If we have time, colleagues, we do have a little bit of committee business. Should we have the time, I would suggest to you that maybe we could slip into a business session. And as a result of the postponement of the previous meeting, we got a little rejigging to do. So if we have time today, doing that would be in our best interest. So unless there are any interventions or reasons why I should not proceed, I will immediately go to our Auditor General and ask him for his presentation. Hearing none, then I turn to Mr. Ferguson. Welcome, sir. Always a pleasure to have you before the committee, and the floor is now yours, sir.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, nous sommes heureux d'être.
Mr. Chair, we are pleased to be here and would like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss our 2012-2013 performance report and our 2014-15 report on plans and priorities. With me today is Lynn Sachs, Assistant Auditor General of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer.
Supporting its oversight of government spending and performance with our financial audits, performance audits, special examinations of Crown corporations, and the work of the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. All of our audits are conducted in accordance with Canadian auditing standards and Canadian standards on quality control. We subject our system of quality control to internal practice reviews and monitoring, and to periodic external reviews to provide assurance that you can rely on the quality of our work. Au cours de l'exercice 2012-2013,
during 2012-2013 fiscal year, the period covered by our most recent performance report, we used 88.2 million of the 93.8 million in parliamentary appropriations available to us, resulting in a lapse of 5.6 million. We had a budget of 615 full-time equivalent employees and employed the equivalent of 603 full-time employees, a decrease of 37 from the year before. These results reflect the progress we have made on implementing the reductions planned in our strategic and operating review proposal. With these resources, all but 4 of our scheduled audits were completed. 2 of the audits that were not completed were the special examination for the Canada Employment Insurance Financing Board, which was cancelled as the organization was wound up, and the special examination for the Canada Lands Company Limited, which was delayed to allow us to take into account significant organizational changes in the corporation.
The 2013 performance report contains a number of indicators of the impact of our work and measures of our operational performance. The tables containing our targets and actual performance results are attached to this statement. These tables show that our clients and the senior managers in the organizations we audit find that our audits add value. They also show that the office participated in 27 committee hearings and briefings, compared with 29 the previous year, and that parliamentary committees reviewed 30% of our performance audits, compared with 48% the previous year. The report also shows that departments made satisfactory progress in addressing 72% of the 25 performance audit recommendations that we followed up on that year. Of the 7 qualifications noted in our financial audit reports that were not addressed, 5 were mainly for failing to file annual reports on time, while only 2 were related to auditing or accounting matters. There were no significant deficiencies identified in the 3 special examinations that we completed this year, and all previous deficiencies have been addressed. Les mesures de notre rendement.
Our measures of organizational performance remained positive, with our on-budget performance for all of our financial audits improving over the previous year. 8 of our performance audits exceeded their planned budget, in many cases because of expansion of the audit scope. Our most recent employee survey, conducted in the last fiscal year, showed that employee engagement remained high, with 95% of our employees feeling proud to work for the office. Looking forward, we have articulated a new set of strategic objectives for the office and identified 4 areas where we believe we can make improvements. In planning for 2014-15, we will be working to make progress in each of these areas.
To ensure that our audits are adding value for parliamentarians, territorial legislators, Crown Corporation boards of directors, and audit committees. Second, we will be working to make our governance and decision-making practices and processes as efficient and economical as possible. Third, having completed the updating of our audit methodology last year, we will be looking at opportunities to implement our audit methodology as efficiently and economically as possible. Finally, we have begun talking with our staff about ensuring that we operate in an environment where our employees feel more empowered to do their work. In 2014-15, we will complete our action plan to reduce operating costs based on the Strategic and Operating Review proposal that we submitted to Parliament in October 2011. Our budget shows that we will reduce our staff levels and achieve our planned spending reduction of over $6.5 million 1 year in advance of our target. While we have reduced the number of financial audits we undertake by 25, we will continue to look for efficiencies and will continue to look for efficiencies. We are confident that we can serve Parliament with this reduced funding. We expect to complete more than 95 financial audits, 27 performance audits, and 4 special examinations in the 2014-15 fiscal year. We are also conducting an audit of the Senate of Canada at the Senate's request.
I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Julie Gelford as the new Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. Julie joined the office on March 24. She brings over 25 years of diverse experience in the field, including senior positions with Rio Tinto, was Vice President of Sustainable Development of the Mining Association of Canada and President of Nature Canada.
My staff and I thank you for your ongoing interest and support of our work. We look forward to providing you with valuable assurance, information, and advice in the coming year. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd be pleased to answer your questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. And we'll now begin the discussion in rotation in the usual fashion, beginning with Mr. Falk. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, Mr. Ferguson, I just want to question on your report there on number 12. You state that you've got 4 objectives there. Would those objectives be in order of priority?
I would say that we're working on all 4 of them concurrently.
Okay, and which would you prioritize?
I think, really the first thing we are doing is looking at the governance of the office. So that's probably the first thing we're doing, but probably more because it is a prerequisite for the others. Okay. Certainly, the thing that is of most value to us is to make sure that what we do is adding value to parliamentarians. So understanding that value proposition that we bring, I think, is probably the most important of our 4 objectives.
Yeah, I think in your stated targets in your lengthy report there, you indicate I think you're looking for an 80% kind of satisfaction rate of people from the department and also parliamentarians, and it seems as though you're achieving that with the reports that you're providing.
I believe that. Without having sort of the numbers precisely in front of me, I believe that's the case.
Yes. Okay. And with the budget that you're proposing, where do you expect to invest the largest portion of that budget, and which of these priorities will take the funding?
Well, the way that the work of the office happens is we have essentially 2 distinct lines of business. One being preparing our financial audits, so doing audits of sets of financial statements of the federal government, the territories, and various Crown corporations. The other is doing the performance audits, which we present to this committee and have and talk about in front of this committee. So in terms of how our budget is divided, that's how our budget is divided in general. In terms of the 4 priorities that we have here, those are all things that we are planning on doing within that environment of have to prepare those 2 types of audits, the financial audits and the performance audits. So, these are all, I guess, sort of normal general activities that we undertake within all of the work that we do.
Okay. You've got also some other expenditures, I believe, in the budget. Can you comment a little further on where those funds are going to be used?
I can, again, I think sort of in general, when we look at our budget, we look at our budget either sort of, from the point of view of the type of expenditures that we have. For example, payroll, supplies and that type of thing. But the way that we really manage our budget mostly is based on the products we produce. So either, how much does it cost to do our financial audits? How much does it cost to do our performance audits and special exams? And then what does it cost to provide overall support to our audit process? And when we do that, we use essentially a full cost approach where we allocate, our administrative costs to the different types of audits that we have. So, for example, I'll ask Ms. Sachs to provide some numbers for what we spent on in the last fiscal year.
Basically, our budget's broken down into 3 pieces. We spend about $72 million in salary, about $12 million in non-salary, which is generally professional contracts, IT-related purchases, and another $12 million approximately, which is services we receive that we don't have to pay for. But what we usually manage ourselves is about $84 million, and it's very straightforward. It's about $72 million salaries and $12 million of other costs.
Contract.
And then we allocate based on audit hours of our products, we will allocate those costs to the big picture, which is what Mike's talking about. Yeah. We divide it among our products. Okay. Is that okay?
Your second and your fourth priority are certainly linked together, if not almost twinned together. Can you comment a little bit more about staff engagement and also satisfaction and the changes that you propose to be making in your governance structure?
In terms of staff engagement, having our staff engaged in what they do is obviously critical to the work that we do. As I said in my opening statement, we have a very high rate of our employees being proud of the work they do and where they work. And I think that's critical to what they do. Though we don't want to rest on that, and what we are doing is we are, going through a process now of determining if there are other ways that we can increase that level of engagement and empower our employees in the work that they do, again, to increase that level of engagement. In terms of the overall governance structure, what we are doing there is looking at the structure of the office at the most senior levels, and also looking at how we go about making decisions within the government, and are there ways of streamlining the process by which we make decisions.
Thank you. Time has expired, sir. No. Sorry. We're over 6.5 minutes. You're a minute and a half over, so I have to call it there. Over to Mr. Thibeault. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to be back at this committee, and great to see you, Mr. Ferguson. I guess my first question, very quickly, is in relation to the Commissioner of the Environment. I believe her office is part of your office, and I know there was a recent report. I'm just wondering if you're aware if anyone's going to be studying the Commissioner's report in the very near future. My recollection is the last report that the interim commissioner released, went before the committee, sort of just in the normal, release of the report. But after that, to the best of my knowledge, there haven't been any hearings scheduled on any of the chapters in that report. Thank you. Now, I'm going to jump to some of the points that's in your indicator table 1. It's relating to, I guess, the reduction of course, trying to reduce operating costs, so less and less audits that are happening. I believe we're looking at, from one year to the next, we've just seen these drop. So from, I think we're going to 30% of performance audits were reviewed in 2012-2013, 48 in 11-12, 62 in 10 and 11. So what is the target, I guess, in terms of 2014 and 2015, especially considering the fact that we're seeing and hearing more and more from Canadians that they want a little more transparency and a little more information as to into what the information is coming out of with these audits?
The indicator that you're referring to is, I think, the percentage of performance audits reviewed by parliamentary committees. And, our target is to maintain or increase. We don't have a specific percentage that we are aiming at, but certainly over the last 3 years, the percentage of performance audits that we have prepared that have been reviewed by parliamentary committees has been reducing. The number of performance audits that we've been preparing has stayed relatively stable between sort of the 28 to 30 range of audits, but the number that have come before committee has been reducing, and in this particular table shows that it was 48% in 11-12 and 30% in 12-13. Every time that we do release an audit report, we send a letter to the chair of each of the committees that we feel might be interested in that particular report, so that they can consider it for doing hearings. So there's not much more that we can do other than make people aware that they exist.
So, sir, have we seen these numbers reduce since 2011, since we've seen a majority government?
I believe that over the last number of years, that the percentage has decreased, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I believe the Senate audit is going to be fitting into your department's plans. Maybe you can talk briefly about these plans, and is that going to be affecting any of the other audit activities?
The Senate audit is underway. We've been staffing it mostly with internal resources. We have had to get a few resources externally as well. In general, I believe to this point, there was one audit that we had planned to do that we've delayed because of the Senate audit. Other than that, we found most of the resources, because of some changes of our plan on the financial audit side, so not something that you would notice particularly, because it wouldn't affect our performance audits. But I think right now, in terms of performance audits that we would be planning on bringing forward to the Parliament of Canada, I believe that we have only sort of delayed one of those so far because of the Senate work.
Half a minute, thank you. How many auditors are normally assigned to a performance audit?
It certainly can range. I guess what I would say is a performance audit, usually takes us about 8,000 hours. So if you said, each person would be less than 2,000 hours, obviously. So it's probably in the 6 range. But then you could have a lot more that are actually working on it. But in terms of over that time period, it's probably somewhere around 6.
Okay, sorry, time has expired. Thank you. Over to Mr. Woodworth. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ferguson and Ms. Sachs, for attending today. It's always extremely interesting, and I want to just begin by, again, commending you on the necessary and good serving function that you provide in allowing government to continuously update its processes. I want to begin with some things that are probably obvious to all of us sitting at this table, but may not be so obvious to those who sit at home, and that is with the raison d'etre of the department, of your department, your agency itself. And as I read it, there are a couple of important functions that your audits and studies provide. One of them is to provide objective information, advice, and assurance to Parliament, territorial legislatures, governments, and Canadians. Do you consider that as, in fact, probably the prime function of your agency?
I think that very much is our prime function.
And also, as I understand it, your office assists parliamentarians and territorial legislatures in their work regarding the authorization and oversight of government spending and operations. And this, too, is a very important function and reason for your department. Is that correct?
Yeah, as we see our role is to do the work, present the work to parliamentarians, and then parliamentarians can use it to hold government accountable.
So the question I have for you is, are you confident and comfortable that your agency will be able to adequately meet these important objectives with the 2014-2015 budget that you've estimated for us?
Yes, we'll be able to do that.
And will your department be able to continue producing audits that comply with professional standards and are delivered on time and on budget with the money that you've estimated for us for 2014-15?
Certainly complying with professional standards is paramount for us. All of our audits will comply with professional standards. On time and on budget is always our goal. Some of the audits are not necessarily delivered on time or on budget, but that's our goal. But they will all comply with professional standards.
And am I correct that you plan with this budget to complete 95 financial audits, 27 performance audits, and 4 special examinations, and also, on top of all of that, continue with your audit of the Senate.
That is our plan, yes.
And as I understand it, all of this will be accomplished even after having reduced your staffing levels over the last year or two. You're still going to be able to accomplish these goals. Is that correct?
Yes, and part of the way that we were able to do that is that there were a number of particularly financial audits that we were able to discontinue.
Right. Those are the ones that you referred to in your remarks? Very good. And I understand also that all of these accomplishments that you are planning for the 2014-2015 year are going to be achieved even after a 7.8% spending reduction that has occurred over the last year or two, and in fact that you were able to bring in ahead of your target date. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I just want to say that I commend you for demonstrating, in fact, that modest spending restraint can save millions of dollars without sacrificing program objectives and also without sacrificing quality. We often hear a kind of a post-apocalyptic version of the spending restraint that goes on in government as if it's going to devastate operations across the board. But I think your agency is proof positive that those two things can go hand in hand, and I thank you for that. I have one other area I want to delve into, and it is about the fact that I am frequently frustrated that Auditor General performance audits make recommendations without any mention of the cost to government departments of implementing those recommendations. And I know that this is an interesting area of auditing practice, but what I'd like to know is how much more money would your department need in order to be able to give Parliament the cost of the recommendations that you propose in your performance audits?
You know, certainly I wouldn't be able to give you an estimate of that right now. One thing, though, that you know we try to do every time we make a recommendation with departments is have that conversation about what can be done, you know, and what can be done reasonably. So we're always conscious of the fact that any of the recommendations that we make cause work for the departments and may have a cost to actually implement. Of course, you know, they're important recommendations that should be implemented. But you know, how much it would cost us to try to put an estimate on, you know, the effort by the departments to implement those, it wouldn't be something I could give you right now.
The reason that I...
I'm sorry. The time's expired, Mr. Woodward.
Thank you very much.
I did allow an extra minute leeway there to hear the answer. Over to Monsieur Giguère. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am pleased to welcome you, our witnesses here today, and I thank you for your report. My first question is that you stated that the amount of files reviewed by this committee is being reduced. Unfortunately, we're talking about quantity, but have you done an analysis of the quality of the reports? I mean, are the major reports on which the committee has looked at, is this effective, or is the committee wasting its time by looking at reports on agencies where everything is fine and we really don't need to spend any time on those reports?
What we do is we go through each of the performance audits that we have prepared over the last number of years and look at whether they have been, you know, the subject of a hearing by either the Public Accounts Committee or any other committee. We feel obviously that all of our audits are important. So therefore, we're quite happy with the ones that have had hearings, but we also feel that there are a number of important chapters that we have produced that have not had hearings. And obviously it would be our preference for more and a larger percentage of the reports that we produce to have hearings.
Seriez-vous hostile à indiquer lorsque...
Would you be adverse to the idea, when a report is presented, to advising us, the committee, when certain committees should be, it's critical that certain committees reports be looked at?
Up to each committee to make the decision about which reports they want to look at. Again, we feel that that all of our audits are important, but there have been a number of them that have not had hearings, and we think that they have important information, but we can't make the decision. I wouldn't say that any of our reports are not important. I think they are all important. So for me to sort of say, there should be a hearing on this chapter or that chapter, we feel that they're all important.
Au niveau des... Si on regarde la...
If we look at the continuity of your investigations, we see that sometimes the same issues keep recurring. The example that I can give of this, the best, is Transport Canada and self-regulation. In the case of air transport, you have said that the recommendations that we are making are the same as the recommendations that we made in the previous report and the report before that. And they say that they're accepting your recommendations, but I don't seem to see that that they're swiftly implementing reports. Is this something that you have noted yourself?
In my opening statement, Mr. Chair, in the course of the work that we are presenting today, there were 25 recommendations that we had made in performance audits, previous performance audits, that were followed up in this time period. What we found was that the departments had made satisfactory progress on 72% of those. So there's still room for improvement there, but we do, it is part of our work to look at recommendations we've made in the past, and either sometimes we do a follow-up audit that specifically looks at the same areas. Sometimes what we do is, if we are doing a performance audit in a similar area, we will look at recommendations we've made in the past and see whether the department has followed up on those satisfactorily. In this time period, we found 72% of the 25 performance audit recommendations that we made were satisfactorily followed up on.
15 seconds.
Ouf, en si peu de temps, c'est difficile de...
Better give us an opinion rather than a question.
It's going to be a little bit tricky. Mr. Ferguson, do you have do you have enough room to maneuver in your budget to be able to proceed to an emergency audit if you see it's necessary? For example, for CRA, we learned before the holidays that there was a serious problem of corruption. Are you able to change your agenda to conduct investigations when something comes up and appears to be urgent?
Have a lot of room to make changes quickly, but when something urgent does come up, we look to see whether there are ways to make to incorporate those.
Thank you. That'll have to do, I'm afraid. Moving along, Mr. Albus, you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Ferguson and Ms. Sash for coming in today to discuss, a very important role, your role, but also to make sure that we as parliamentarians have the opportunity to make sure that we're asking questions, because we do hold the government to account. All parliamentarians have that, and we do that primarily through the estimates process, the RPPs, the reports on plans and priorities, as well as obviously departmental performance reports. So Mr. Ferguson, what are the trends you're seeing in the reports on plan and priorities and your departmental performance reports? Do you foresee anything new happening in the future?
In terms of our own reports, we have an exercise underway right now under the direction of Ms. Sachs to look at all of our indicators, our performance indicators, to see whether they are still relevant, to see whether we are covering everything, to see whether it's necessary to make any changes. So I'm not sure you will see any changes necessarily in our next series of reports, but we think the time right now, it's a time right now to review our performance indicators to see if they're still relevant.
Thank you for that. And when I believe it was last year, you had mentioned that there was a strategic visioning exercise that you were taking your organization through. Are you completed that process? Have you completed it?
It's been through that process that we have identified these 4 priorities. So I'm being a little careful in terms of saying whether we've completed it or not. We've completed it, but to the extent that we now have to actually implement it, and during sort of implementation there will always be changes. So it will, I guess, it'll be a never-ending process. But we have identified sort of 12 areas of importance, and out of those 12 areas we identified the 4 priorities that I talked about earlier on.
And the core priorities, I believe Mr. Falk had touched upon. Those are the 4 priorities laid out in your statement on page 3, I think, section 12. Is that right?
That's right. I'll just make sure that it's the right reference.
The 4 concurrent
yes.
Priorities.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And again, there's the old saying, Mr. Chair, that managers do things right and leaders make sure they do the right things. And so I'd just like to ask you, you've been in the job now for let's say it's been about 2.5 years. Is that correct, sir?
That's right.
Yeah, so for that, I would hope that given your experience, that you would be able to have some perspective and maybe share it with the committee today, just in terms of your experience. Have you seen that the challenges that when you first took the office of Auditor General, have you seen many of those challenges that were there? Have they been dealt with? What are some of the new challenges that you see on the horizon for your organization? And how does that fit back into that strategic process that you're working on?
Well, that's really what the strategic planning process was all about, and we started it probably about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I guess, going through that process of saying, what is it that we should be focusing on? What are the important things that we should be focusing on? And coming out of that, we recognize that there are these 4 priorities that we need to really focus on. We need to focus on our employees and make sure that they feel that they can do the job that they should be doing. We need to focus on, are we sure that the things that we are doing are adding value? Is there anything we are doing that is not adding value? We need to make sure that we are a well-run organization ourselves and that we're governing ourselves properly. And we need to look at the way that we are conducting all of our audits, because we can conduct our audits, we can comply with standards, we can make sure that the audits are all well done, but we also need to ask the question, are we doing it efficiently and are we doing it economically? So those are the 4 things that I think we really need to focus on. Overall, I think our end product is good, and you see that in these types of indicators. But I think that there are, we can look at how we're getting to that end product, and can we do a better job of sort of in the production mode of getting to that end product.
We're going to have to call it unless you can do something in 3 seconds.
I just want to say I appreciate your perspective as a leader of your organization, and it's difficult to be both the leader and to be part of an organization, and so it seems that your process seems to be working.
Very good. Thank you. And moving along, Madame Jones, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Mr. Ferguson and Madame Sachs for coming in today and your presentation. Just a couple of questions to follow up on what my colleagues have already raised, I guess. First of all, in your report, when I look at the fact that you have 37 less staff in your office and you've been able to cut by $6.5 million, and that you're doing 25 less audits than you would normally be doing, I guess it begs the question for me, do you feel that the oversight role that you've previously done in the Office of the Auditor General is being able to maintain at the level that you think it should be in overseeing the business of Canadians in terms of your office?
Again, we have two lines of business, right? The first line being financial statement audits, and you know, very few people sort of understand the work that we do on financial statement audits, and it's about, you know, it takes up about half of the resources of the office. What we did during our review was, you know, the first thing was we said, are there any of those financial statement audits essentially that we are doing that are not adding much value? And that's how we identified the 25 audits that were eliminated. Okay. So what it meant was, on the performance audit side of what we do, we've been able to maintain the amount of work that we are doing on that side. Of course, you know, there's no shortage of what you could do performance audits on when you look at an organization as large as the federal government. You know, we are able to continue with somewhere around, you know, 27 to 30 performance audits, and you know, without a significant reduction in that. So, you know, given that that's been the amount that we've been doing for the last number of years, I think that you know, that we're able to maintain that.
Okay, thank you. You talked about the fact that you'd been asked to, you know, do an audit of the Senate. You'd been requested by the Senate. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the particular aspects that you'll be looking at in that audit, and what time frame that will cover?
We're looking at you know, the spending of each and every senator. You know, every dollar that was spent by each and every senator over a 2-year time period. I'd be going by memory to get the exact start and end date, so I don't want to get that wrong, but it's a 2-year time period for, you know, all of the spending of each and every senator that we're going through.
And you feel that even taking on this additional piece of work, that you still have the resources in-house to continue to complete that piece of work as well?
As I said, what we did in that exercise was there is one performance audit that we have delayed. And then there was some work by an internal group that we have that deals with a number of our financial audits that we were able to say, you know, we don't need to do that over the course of this time period that we're doing the Senate audit. So we had those individuals, and then just with our normal budgeting, where we have, you know, certain people unassigned in case there are jobs that come up. By the time we put all of those things together, we felt we were able to handle the work involving the Senate.
One of the things you outlined in your report, I guess it was disappointing for me to learn, is that only 30% of the cases that you review are actually looked at by the committee. And you know, I believe that the work that is done by the Auditor General's office is done with the sole purpose of keeping everybody to a higher standard, or implementing best practices that could always work better for the public and for governments. So I guess, you know, in looking at that, it is somewhat disappointing. The question that I have is that when you do these performance audits, and the particular pieces that gets reviewed by committees as opposed to those that don't. Have you ever measured what the success rate is from one to the other, if there's more implementation of practices and recommendations once they're reviewed by committee or not?
We haven't broken it down that way, and I do want to just comment that the number of hearings that we have had with this committee has stayed stable for the last 3 years at about, the number I have here is about 13, 14. So where we've noted a particular drop-off has been with some of the other committees. Now, if you go back further, even for this committee, the number of hearings was higher. But over the last 3 years, that's been more stable. But if you go back to 2010, 2011, it was significantly higher. I think in terms of departments appearing before the committee, I mean, departments take all of our recommendations seriously, and they put together what their action plans are going to be. But I think there's no question that there's nothing that sort of focuses the mind of departments, like having to come in front of a committee and explain what they're going to do in terms of some of the things that we're going to, some of the things that we noted. So, okay, sorry.
That's all right. I'm just getting a long time there. It's about a minute and a half over your time. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. I allowed as much latitude as I could. Just on that, I have to say that you've heard me say this many times, but John Williams, sort of my guru in public accounts, always said that when a deputy minister learns that they're being called in front of the public accounts for a public hearing, it should ruin their entire week. I think that's a good standard by which whether we're doing our job properly or not. Moving along, Mr. Carmichael, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. Mr. Ferguson, I'd like to just address two areas. The second being financial and performance audits. I'll come back to that, though, if I have time. But I'd like to talk about some of the international implication with reduced budgets, greater efficiency, and all the good things you've addressed today, which I have to tell you I find very impressive in terms of the results and the way the organization is being driven to create better results with the reduced resources. I wanted to ask you, though, about international involvement from your perspective as far as areas where you're called to assist on peer audits with some of your colleagues globally. You've also been audited by other auditor generals, and I wonder if you have any of those planned in the next year, and how does this affect some of the numbers and the budgets we're hearing about today?
In terms of having peer reviews done of our organization, we have set a target of having a complete peer review of the organization done once a mandate of an Auditor General. So the last one that was done was by the Australian National Audit Office, led by the Australian National Audit Office, and was done, I believe, in 2009, 2010. And it resulted in us undertaking a project to look at our methodology, our audit methodology, and we put considerable resources into that project. Right now, we are involved in, as part of the team, we are not leading it, but we're part of the team doing a peer review of the Government Accountability Office in the United States. Now, in addition to that, we spend a lot of time with various international audit institutes, looking at some of their practices. We've been involved quite significantly in the past, for example, with Mali and with a number of other countries as well.
And I guess that really comes back to Clause 12 of your report today, where you talk about your 4 priorities, and the third being having completed the updating of our audit methodology, be looking at opportunities to implement our audit methodology as efficiently and economically as possible, and sharing some of those those learnings internationally is of benefit not only to us as Canadians, but also to those with whom you share. I wonder if you could review in brief your office's international activities then to date and discuss more specifically the development of professional standards and the promotion of better managed and accountable international institutions. Specifically, where is the focus of your office internationally, and do you focus on key countries, unions, geographic zones? You've mentioned some of the work you're doing with the U.S., but I wonder if there's anything else that we could be brought up to date on.
I think one of the very long-standing and successful international programs we have is what we refer to as our Fellows Program. And what we will do is we will bring primarily performance auditors from other countries in who come to work in our office, in our performance audit practice for 9 months over the course of a year. And it's not just done through us, it also involves the provincial auditors general offices as well. So right now, for example, there are 2 fellows from the Auditor General's Office of Vietnam that are stationed with the Auditor General of Alberta. There are 2 from Cameroon with the Auditor General of Quebec. We have 1 from Ghana and 1 from Tanzania with us. And they stay in Canada with those audit offices for 9 months, get training, work on actual audits, and then take their learning back to their home countries. And we've been doing that for a number of years. We also have a number of other international activities as well.
Great, thank you. Coming back to financial and performance audits, I wonder if you'd just be good enough to address some of the overlap issues. It strikes me that there must be significant overlap between the 2 audits as you measure a financial audit and a performance audit. And I would, in other words, I think it would be hard to truly assess a financial or a performance audit without consideration of financial metrics. I wonder if you could just address that.
When we're doing a financial statement audit, our goal, our objective is to determine whether the financial statements have been presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that mandate is very specific, looking at a set of financial statements and has the accounting been done according to standards. When we're looking at a performance audit, we establish an objective for a certain program. We might look at some financial aspects of that, but generally we're asking the question of, is this program meeting its objectives?
Okay. Sorry, time has expired. Thank you. And if I may, just to correct the record, I understand I said a name other than John Williams. It was John Williams was who I meant as the previous chair of this committee. Monsieur Giguère, you have the floor, sir.
Ma confrère, Madame Jones, a ouvert.
My colleague, Madam Jones, referred to the investigation that you're conducting of the Senate, and obviously you are going to be looking at all the expenses, if expenses were duly authorized. But are you also going to be looking at the pertinence, the relevance of these expenditures? And I mean that the senators have as much money for staff as MPs do, but they don't have the same amount of work to do because they don't have to have a riding office. Are you going to check whether these employees, with respect to their work, actually do the work for which they're doing in the course of a year? And if they use this time for partisan political activities, is this the type of investigation that you can do in the context of your budget, or would that be too expensive a project?
Doing of the Senate, I would characterize essentially as an audit that's focusing on compliance. So for spending by senators out of Senate offices, you know, were they complying with the rules? Now, of course, when you get into that type of audit, there are sometimes some rules that you have to pass some judgment on. But I would essentially call it a compliance audit. So it wouldn't be, you know, it's not sort of a a value for money or a performance audit, but we would be looking to make sure that the spending that was happening was for Senate business and wasn't for other business.
OK, donc si jamais
So if, for example, human resources were used for partisan activities, you would look at that. You would examine that possibility, if I've clearly understood you. There will be some analysis of the Senate staff performance.
Again, what we are looking at is whether the spending was incurred for Senate business. So I'm not going to sort of go down into sort of the particular examples that might be outside of that, but what the money was spent for has to meet the test of being for Senate business for all of the spending that occurred in that 2-year time period.
une enquête de performance au niveau.
And a performance audit of the Senate with regards to the Senate's expenditures, say $50 million a year is spent.
Chair, and I understand Mr. Guiguer has questions. Again, the Auditor General is here for the express purpose to discuss the estimates, et cetera. So while I understand that the member may have questions, those are lines that he can question. He can seek the Auditor General. We're here to talk about the estimates.
Okay. I think, in fairness, we're talking about the work plans of the Auditor General. If it was any other subject matter that was covered by the work done by the Auditor General, would we give the latitude to pursue it? And I think the answer to that would be yes. So I am listening carefully because I know we're getting close to capital P political issues, but I don't hear anything yet out of order. Well, relevance, that's the work of the Auditor General. That's all we need for relevance. Mr. Hayes.
I agree with Mr. Albus here. This committee has no oversight role with respect to the Senate whatsoever. The Senate has the oversight role with respect to the Senate. I don't believe this committee should be discussing the Senate. It's a matter of relevance. Our oversight role has nothing to do with the Senate. We have an oversight role with all of the other Auditor General's reports, and I don't see that it would be this committee's responsibility to audit the Senate report when it comes out. It's going to be the responsibility of a Senate committee, I would expect.
I don't know about that for sure. I'll tell you what the detail is on that last one. But nonetheless, we're still talking about the work of the Auditor General. I haven't sensed that the Auditor General is in some kind of political distress because of the kinds of questions, that they're so political it's making it difficult. I am listening carefully. They're fairly straightforward in terms of the kind of audit that's being done. We're talking about the work of the Auditor General. I will continue to listen closely, but I'm not yet satisfied that the member has stepped outside the bounds, given that we do allow as much latitude as possible at committee, but there are lines. So I'm watching for the lines, but I have to say to colleagues, I have not yet sensed that line being crossed. Mr. Giguère, you're aware of this conversation. I just ask you to keep that in your mind as you move forward. Mr. Giguère? No, Mr. Giguère. You're talking to me first.
OK.
So I just ask you to keep it in mind, OK? And with that, having said that, you now have the floor to continue. Please continue questioning Mr. Ferguson.
Alors, très bien. Vous avez indiqué que vous
have said that you were conducting a compliance audit, and performance audits are more expensive, and this is the case in your special verification of the Senate. It will be a compliance audit. A performance audit, which is more expensive and is more in depth. If you were asked to do that, would you have the financial means to conduct such an audit?
It would be difficult to determine how to do a performance audit on, and I would sort of say whether it's a member of the Senate or a member of the House of Commons, how you do a performance audit on the work that any particular member does would be difficult. So I think that sort of a compliance audit, looking at the spending, was the spending for Senate business, I think probably gets to the core of the important spending that would go on in a senator's office.
Très bien, Monsieur le Président.
Well, half a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have half a minute. But you have said you can carry out your mandate within your budget if departments cooperate and if if they are fully open with you. And the report presented on sustainable development and on greenhouse gases, they came with tables, and I commented. You can't establish a correspondence between the money spent annually and the reduction in gas emissions, which was the government's objective. And I was told in reply that the fact that the departments themselves have provided approximations with respect to gas reductions, they haven't provided us with the pertinent information. The fact that in files, certain files, the information is not accessible, does this have an influence on your capacity to make a report and also to determine your budget's effectiveness?
For us to do any audit, it's always imperative that we get the information that we ask for. And if we do not get the information that we've asked for, we have an obligation to report that to Parliament. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, just before I go to Mr. Hayes, I just want to touch on the point of order because it's an important one. And the reference I'm going to make is O'Brien and Bosch, our Bible, the interpretation of our rules. And it says under, I've lost it now. Oh, yeah. There we are. Under consideration of estimates in committee, page 870, the discussion on vote, quote, the discussion on vote 1 in the main estimates, generally departmental administration or operations, is traditionally wide-ranging. Chairs have generally exercised considerable latitude in the nature of the questioning permitted on estimates. Just lest anyone want to pursue that further. Mr. Hayes, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess we do good as a committee, 13 to 14 hearings a year. And outside of doing more hearings, which I would think, given our resources, is impossible, I'm trying to get a sense of whether this committee can do more to assist you or help you with your recommendations or follow up on your recommendations, because it would appear to me that your only source of follow-up is to conduct another complete performance audit, and that's your way of following up on prior recommendations. And I'm wondering if as a committee there might be, even not necessarily along that line of thinking, but if there is a way as a committee that we could be helping out in some way, shape, or form in terms of accountability towards some of the reports that you've conducted without us actually having the ability to do a hearing, or even after an initial hearing, prior to you having a chance to do another performance audit?
I think that if the departments believe that they have to submit an action plan to this committee, which I understand they do, on each and every audit that we perform, regardless of whether there's a hearing or not, I think certainly that sends the right message to the departments. Also, we can choose to do a follow-up audit on anything that we want, at a later point. And we're not going to we can't follow up on all audits. But any input, I guess, that we get from the committee in terms of chapters that would be of interest to the committee for follow-up, that could help as well. But I think outside of having the hearings, as long as there's a very clear message coming from the committee that the departments are expected to come up with an action plan and expected to present that action plan, send that action plan to the committee, that certainly that's helpful.
Thank you. Just a question on one of your four priorities is articulating the value of its audits. And I'm hoping that you can elaborate on that a little bit. And I guess I just, there's a little discrepancy that I'm finding between your indicator table 1, where this is about value of audits, and the percentage of department senior managers who find our performance audits add value. The target is only 70%, and I'm wondering why only 70% when you know, the board chairs the target is 90%, and audit committee chairs the target is 90%. You know, you had an actual of 79% who thought it added value in 2011, 2012, yet now you're accepting a target of 70%. So I just want to understand this concept of adding value a little bit, and how you're going to measure that, and why the 70%, and what is value.
I think probably the first thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of reviewing our indicators. So do we have the right indicators, and do we have the right targets? So that process is underway. In terms of, you know, are we adding value? You know, again, the responses that we are getting back on our surveys indicate that we are adding value. But we feel we need to try to delve a little deeper into that question to understand what is it about, whether it's a financial audit, a special exam, or a performance audit, that does add value, so that when we are doing an audit, you know, we can focus on those things. In terms of why the indicator for senior managers is lower than you know, for you know, chairs and other stakeholders, I think that's a recognition that sometimes when we are doing an audit, you know, it can end up being an uncomfortable position for management. So at the end of that process, while the audit committee may very well feel that yes, this added value, I think that's giving us a little bit of a buffer that there are sometimes some managers who are not necessarily unhappy with the outcome of the audit, but are maybe not particularly happy that they were the subject of an audit.
Less than 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Quickly, there's your recommendations were up in terms of being reviewed. They were up from 62% to 72% on one audit, and they were up on the performance audits as well. What do you attribute that increase to? It seems like a fairly substantive increase.
I think I would just say that you know, I think departments, if they feel they are going to be held accountable for putting the recommendations in place, and the more they feel the pressure to put the recommendations in place, the better that compliance rate is going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. Moving along, Ms. Jones, you have the floor again, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. The question I have is regarding the territorial financial audits that you do. And this year we just went through a devolution agreement with the Northwest Territories. And I know that they're maintaining the audit process that was in place before devolution, but I guess my question is, does this require extra work or any additional audit work that normally would not come under the current practice that you have in place?
What we do in terms of the territories is we essentially act as the Auditor General for each of the 3 northern territories. So we audit the public accounts of each of the 3 northern territories, you know, the financial statements of the government, present those findings to the territorial legislature. We audit the various Crown corporations in each of those territories as well, and we try to do at least one performance audit a year in each of the 3 territories. That work, our plan is that work will continue, and we don't have any reason right now to suspect that, you know, there's anything that would cause us to have to reduce that work.
Okay. This question, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I guess I'm a little new to the committee. So I'm just wondering, is there aspects of the federal government or the government of Canada or any of the Crown corporations that the AG's office is not permissible at this stage to do auditing practices on that you may have made requests to do in the past, or even may have not made requests to do. But I'm just wondering if there's any particular aspects that are not included.
Nothing is particularly coming to mind in terms of anything that we have asked to do. You know, there are certain restrictions. The one I think that's coming to mind is the Bank of Canada, where we don't have an audit mandate, but we haven't asked to have an audit mandate at the Bank of Canada. The other, again, isn't something that we have pursued to date, but you know, something we might have to spend some time thinking about is, you know, there are sometimes some organizations that are established that have sort of the ownership is, you know, the federal government as well as provincial governments, you know, are all represented on the board of some organizations. Whether we have the mandate, whether we would have the mandate to do sort of a performance audit in that type of organization or not, I'm not sure. It's not really a question we've explored very far, but at some point it's one that we may want to explore.
If I could just take it a little bit further, obviously, one of those groups that I would be familiar with is the Canadian Newfoundland Labrador Offshore Petroleum Board, which is jointly shared between the federal provincial government. And I'm wondering if that is part of the auditing docket that you guys would have now, or if it would be one that's still excluded.
We actually were, through the work of the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development, sometime over the last 2 years, we did an audit that looked at both of the offshore petroleum boards in Newfoundland and Labrador and in Nova Scotia. I've forgotten the actual title of that particular chapter, but it was within the last 2 years, done as a report issued by the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. So we were able to get into both of those boards to the extent that we needed to perform those performance audits.
Has there been any other particular audits that have been done like that more recently that would not have been done in the past, that have been added to the work of your office?
Again, I think I think one place where it has always been sort of a bit of an issue as well in terms of, you know, how much access do we have, is either sort of with you know, with Parliament itself, you know, either the House of Commons or the Senate. So I think the fact that we have access now to do the audit of the Senate is a type of audit that you know, that we have only done, you know, periodically rather than sort of on a regular basis.
10 seconds. You're good? Great. Thank you very much. Moving along, Mr. Aspin, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome both of you to our committee. I'm looking at page 3 under Report on Plans and Priorities, and you have indicated in your remarks, Mr. Ferguson, that looking forward, we have articulated a new set of strategic objectives for the office and identified 4 areas where we believe we can make improvements in your planning, and that's good. That's notable. That's but my question really is on activity, and when making appropriations in the estimates process for the coming fiscal years, how really do you prioritize your office activities? Do you set a set of quotas of audits and schedule different departments, agencies, and programs accordingly to meet that quota? And how does your office account for unexpected needs of Parliament in the estimates?
When we are determining our work plan, we start with the financial statement audits that we do, you know, because we have to do those and we have to do them every year. So they are regular work, and so the first part of our budget is carved out to complete those financial statement audits. Then what we do is we also have a mandate that requires us to do the special exams on Crown corporations, and for most Crown corporations we have to do a special exam at least once every 10 years. So we have a schedule that looks out over a 10-year period about, you know, for each Crown corporation, when do we have to do the special examination. So that's sort of the second piece that would come into our budget. So meeting those legislative requirements to do financial audits and special examinations would be the first thing we take into account. Then with the balance that's left over, that's what we can devote to our performance audits. And when we are deciding on what we can do in terms of performance audits, you know, what we do is we do risk assessments of various government type of activities. We do risk assessments to decide what areas should we be doing performance audits in. Settle on that. We try and, for planning purposes, we try and do that over about a 3-year period, look out over 3 years and say, maybe not exactly what will the subject of the performance audit be in each of those 3 years, but in what area will it be, and do that type of planning. So you know, very much our planning is focused on those 3 activities: financial statement audits, special examinations, and then the performance audits.
Okay, and do you consider factors less quantitative than whether your audits are on time or on budget when measuring your office's performance?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Do you consider factors less quantitative than whether your audits are on time or on budget?
Well, and I think that's why what we are trying to do as well is understand the value that we bring in the audits that we do. So, you know, and again, that's why we do the surveys of our stakeholders about, do they believe that we are adding value? That's how we are trying to understand, you know, what's the less quantitative aspect of these audits. You know, we do financial statement audits of various organizations every year. We can issue a clean opinion on those organizations year after year after year. But the fact that you do those types of financial audits can have a deterrent effect, right? So doing those audits can cause an organization to say, you know, we need to make sure that we are always doing this right. You don't notice from year to year issues coming out of those financial audits. So understanding that there is value to doing financial audits every year, even if they aren't identifying specific problems, is sort of the type of non-quantitative value assessment that I think you're talking about.
Okay, and briefly, because I only have about a half minute left, could you describe your relationship with the rest of government and how that impacts your financial report processes?
You know, we have to work very closely with departments, you know, making sure that they understand what we are doing the audit of, making sure that they understand what information we need and that they can provide us with that information. So, you know, we spend a lot of time making sure that we have good working relationships with the departments that are the subjects of our audit. So that's a very important piece of our business.
Very good. Thank you. And now over to Mr. Thibault. You have the floor again, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm going to start with some comments. So and I will get to a question, so just bear with me. I'm looking at section 12 of your report. It's on page 3. And I'm going to quote what it says here. So first, we want to ensure that our audits are adding value for parliamentarians, territorial legislators, Crown corporations, boards, board of directors, and audit committees. I think everyone of every political stripe would agree that that's important, so we congratulate you on that. The second piece, working to make our governance and decision-making practices and processes as efficient and economical as possible. Again, I think that's all something that we can agree with. Having completed the updating of our audit methodology last year, we'll be looking at opportunities to implement our audit methodology as efficiently and economically as possible. And finally, we have begun talking with our staff about ensuring that we operate in an environment where our employees feel more empowered to do their work, which again is something I think we would all, as all parliamentarians, would agree, which is great. And the Office of the Auditor General has been getting great results. If you go back to your predecessor with the G8 spending, and then of course you taking over that file, the report and the study into the F-35s, of course the Senate audit, and then of course I think more and more we're needing to look at, of course, defense procurement in general. There has been great results coming from your office time and time again. So it makes us wonder, I think, as parliamentarians, at least the opposition on this side, what would we be able to accomplish if you were fully funded and fully resourced? If we've been able to have the G8 spending looked at, had the results in relation to the F-35, and now the Senate audit from previous, and now the ongoing Senate audit, the number of staff which I believe is being reduced is 69 employees from 2010, when the number was 629, to 560 to 2016-2017. So that's 69 employees that are being reduced. How many of those employees are going to be actual auditors that will no longer be employed by the Office of the Auditor General?
I'll ask Ms. Sachs to answer that question.
Out of those numbers, half are administrative efficiencies, reducing the hours that the reception is open, reducing the library services. So the 69 are not auditors. 30 were auditors, and 5, allow me to say that 5 in that third year is because we will be losing an international audit. So it has nothing to do with this work. So let's deal with 60. So 30 administrative, 30 audit, 10 of which were actually producing this methodology. So we're not doing audit. So now we're down to 20, and we've reduced the number of audits. We've reduced about 25 financial audits that we felt were not adding value. So our actual audit complement is actually not dropping. The active work that is being done, other than those 25 financial audits, is going on. The 30 performance audits that we've done historically is still going on. So the numbers look worse than they actually are in the way of reduction of audit power, if you wish to say so. Yeah.
Well, I would state that if, with all due respect, if you move the goalposts, it's easy to make the numbers look like you're fulfilling your mandate. So, you know, we need to ensure, and especially in this time, right, of transparency and accountability, which all parties are saying. I think all parties want to see more of this. So how can we tell Canadians, rest assured, the Office of the Auditor General is able to do the audits that it needs to, because, to quote what Mr. Ferguson said, there are no shortage of doing performance audits. So that was his quote, right? There's no shortage of doing those. But what we have right now, according to the statistics, is a shortage of resources and a shortage of staff.
Okay.
So again, I think it's important to understand that we have the financial audits and we have the special exams that we do and that we have to do according to legislation, right? So that's all covered. Then what's left over, essentially, if you want to look at it that way, is what we put towards performance audits. The amount of sort of effort we put into performance audits, you know, as I've said, hasn't reduced. If Parliament decided it wanted more performance audits, you know, we're really at Parliament telling us how many performance audits they want to do, and the way they do that is essentially by setting the budget. So we can continue to do 30, remembering that performance audits are not just a function of us being able to do them; they're also a function of the departments being able to have the capacity to accept auditors in. You know, so that's another aspect of it. So within this budget, we're able to continue on with the 27 to 30 audits. If Parliament wanted us to do more, that would require more money.
Thank you for that clarification.
Great. Thank you both. And now to our last spot. I understand, Mr. Woodworth, you want to be sharing your time with Mr. Hayes.
That is correct. Thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Thibault for driving home the point that I made earlier about the fact that you are doing a fine job in fulfilling your mandate with efficiencies, and I've appreciated that. I want to unpack a little bit the comment made at paragraph 7 of your comments today about 72% of the 25 performance audit recommendations that you followed up on that year having received a grade of satisfactory progress. And so the first thing I want to ask is, does that mean you did not follow up on all performance audits, only a sampling of 25?
In fact, the 25 refers to recommendations, so it may be that a number of those recommendations were contained in, one performance audit, so it would be significantly fewer than 25 audits that we followed up on. So yes, the answer is we did not follow up on all of them. We just followed up on a sample.
And would it be a fair thing for us as legislators to assume that that sample gives us an indicator of the larger context, if I can put it that way?
Again, really, when we're deciding to do follow-up work, it would be one of two things. Either we've said, let's follow up on a particular report and look at all of the recommendations we made in that report and see whether the department has implemented them satisfactorily. Or we may, if we're doing another area that overlaps a bit, we may just pick out some of the recommendations we made in a previous audit and follow up on those. But certainly when we are following up on any particular recommendation, it's because we felt that those were important recommendations to follow up.
Does your research or your follow-ups indicate any systemic difference in departmental progress which depends upon whether or not the department was actually summoned to a committee of Parliament? In other words, does that appear in your work at all, that there's any systemic difference in consequences or follow-up, whether or not the department has been summoned to appear?
We haven't done that analysis, so my comment is going to be anecdotal, but certainly I believe that, if a department appears, for example, in front of this committee on a follow-up audit where we have judged progress on certain recommendations to be unsatisfactory, I think that probably, in the words of the chair, does cause the deputy minister to have a bad week. And from that point on, we usually see good effort on the part of those departments to make sure that they are following up on, or that they're implementing our recommendations.
I appreciate that you have more right than most people around this table to talk in terms of anecdotal evidence, but I was really looking for any concrete indication, and I accept your answer that really it's not something you've studied.
It's not something we've studied.
And I will turn the balance of my time over to Mr. Hayes, I think it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Sachs, you mentioned that there was $12 million in professional contracts, and I'm assuming professional contracts are consultants. So I'd like to understand how you assess the need for a professional contract. Do you look at the cost comparison between hiring a staff, or do you just determine we don't have the expertise and therefore we need to bring in a professional contract? And is it reasonable that many departments probably go through the same thing when they are forced by necessity to bring in professional contracts?
The general rules for professional contracts are when you assess the need for an expert, an actuary, for example, on an audit. We have thought this through many times. Should we hire an actuary, and have decided we don't have the system to maintain and motivate an actuary full-time. We may want a professional doctor for whatever reason. We're looking at health services. So usually, therefore, expertise added to an audit. There is a small percentage, well, a percentage of our professional contracts that are helping us during the peak season. We have a peak season like any other auditing firm in the summer, where we cannot staff up ourselves to meet those peak times, because then we would have not sure what to do with them the rest of the year. So there's part of that is there. And part of the 12 million is also transportation. So we're traveling across the country. So it's a mixture of those. Every audit has a budget. These contracts are, there's actually a report on, we follow very stringent rules for whether we go to an RFP or we have very standing offers. So yes, that would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. And that exhausts our rounds. Mr. Ferguson, if I might, on your indicator table 2, page 3, under our work is complete on budget performance audits. Now you targeted 80%. You failed to reach that. You reached 69, but you did make reference to the Senate audit requiring some rejigging within the office, and that one of the things that was affected was performance audit. So it's quite possible that that is the only reason for that number to be so low, but if you'd be good enough to comment on that, please.
I think, okay, just, okay, so that's the percentage of audits completed on budget. So what that would indicate is that, you know, we may have had a couple of performance audits where the scope changed, and that caused us to have to put more resources on that audit than we originally thought we were going to have to put on that audit. So as soon as that happens, you know, we still deliver the audit, but it cost us more to do it in terms of putting those resources on it than we thought it was going to involve when we originally undertook the audit.
Okay, so you have every reason to believe you'll hit the 80% that you've targeted for 14-15?
Certainly, that's our intention, is to get back to the 80%.
Okay, and the last thing, if I may, before we release you, is I continue to share your concern about the Environment Commissioner's reports not being looked at the way they should. Part of it's the culture of this place. It's just not been the history of committees to do this, and yet one of the most pressing issues facing the planet is climate change, and for us to be not looking at these reports that are basically the same thing that you do for us, except they're from the Environment Commissioner focused on the environment. And as I understand it, the committee is still, they don't have a culture of saying, okay, we're going to choose so many chapters and we'll hold hearings. They did the general, here's the report with all the chapters, and that was the end of it. And now we're hearing in your report that there are even fewer hearings being held by other committees. I share your concern that this is happening, and I believe it has to change. Obviously, that's not easy, or it would have changed by now. Do you have any thoughts on how we go about changing the culture of this place so that the environmental reports are seen in the same light as your reports?
Certainly, all of the reports that we issue under the Commissioner are done with the same rigor, right? They're audits, just like every other piece of work that we do. You know, we continue to have a relationship with that committee, and in fact, the new Commissioner is planning to meet with each and every member of that committee individually to talk about the work of the Commissioner, with the goal of, you know, hopefully encouraging them to have hearings. So we continue to work on that. But so far, we have not seen much uptake. We haven't seen any uptake in terms of the committees holding hearings on those chapters.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Let's hope that brings about some of the change we need. All right, colleagues, that concludes the hearing. I now have a couple of questions to put to you. The first one is, shall vote 1 less the amount already granted in interim supply carry? Hearing no debate, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried and so ordered. Second vote, shall the chair report the main estimates to the House? Yes. Hearing no debate, all those in favor, please indicate. Thank you. Down. Any opposed? Motion's carried and so ordered. And does the committee want to do a substantive report based on the OAG's departmental performance report and report on plans and priorities? Yes. Yes? All right. All those in favor, please indicate. Thank you. Down. Anyone opposed? That's carried and so ordered. All right. That takes care of that. We have time. There has been some consultation with the parties, and my understanding is that we've agreed we'll do some committee business now in some of the time that's left. Mr. Ferguson and Ms. Sachs, thank you so much. Again, you continue to enjoy not just the support but the respect of this committee and Parliament, and we do thank you for the work that you're doing, and look forward to our next year's efforts together. Thank you again, and you are now excused.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I will now suspend for 2 minutes while we do the technical thing to go in camera and do committee business. We stand suspended.